Hello and welcome. This is your friendly neighborhood editor, and we're going to talk about using some proofreading magic, using Control F and Control H, or find and replace on Word, to make proofreading and copy editing just a little bit easier. Today I'm going to be using Microsoft 365 Word on a Windows computer, which means the functions I'll be using are Control F for find and Control H for find and replace. If you're on a Mac, that would be Command F and Command H. I also like to use Control C for copy, Control V for paste, and Alt Tab to switch tabs. If you're using a different word processor like Scrivener or Google Docs, some of these tips will work for you and some of them won't. So it'll be important for you to experiment and see which of these you can use on Google Docs and Scrivener or a different word processor, and which ones are really best suited for Word. Let's get started. To start, I want to show you a copy of my proofreading checklist. This is a checklist I go through before I start working on any manuscript, whether I'm copy editing or proofreading. I'll go ahead and copy and paste a version of this into the video description below so that you can use it if it's helpful for you. Obviously, you want to make sure that you spell check and grammar check, but the things that we're going to focus on today are the highlighted items, which are items that you can do using the find and replace functions on Word. So the first thing that we'll go over today is checking indents and standardizing them. We'll talk about how to curlify apostrophes and quotation marks, which means taking them from a non-formatted straight version like this into a curly version like this or like this. This can happen a lot when you're switching the formats of your document. So if you take your manuscript from Microsoft Word to Google Docs, for example, and back, sometimes it can strip the formatting from the apostrophes or the quotation marks, and those can be just a little bit unsightly in your manuscript. So I'll show you an easy way to fix that. Double checking the chapter numbering and titles, making sure the chapter numbers are in the right order and all of that jazz. You can do that with the find function. Fixing double spaces, standardizing hyphens, em dashes, and en dashes, something else that you can do with find and replace. Let's talk a little bit about what I mean by that. So an em dash is the width of an M. That's why it's called an em dash, and it's typically used in situations like this. He loomed much like a giraffe over the field. So you can see here we have two em dashes, close set with no spacing around it, and this is just kind of the traditional way that publishers have used em dashes. If you're self-publishing, you can decide to stylize it differently, but historically this is what the sentence would look like. A hyphen is the smallest dash, and it's used to connect two different words. An en dash is the middle-sized dash. It's the width of an N, and usually it's used to link two ranges of numbers. So em dash is for most things, en dash is for numbers. Again, if you're self-publishing, you can do what you want, but a lot of times these three can get easily mixed up or formatted incorrectly, and so double checking, regardless of what the client wants to use, is something that I always do. So if they want to use en dashes instead of em dashes, that's fine, but I always run this test to make sure that it's formatted the way, formatted consistently. Alrighty, a quick note about single quotation marks. This is bad usage if you just have a single quotation mark alone in the sentence. In that scenario, you would want to use a double or a normal quotation mark instead. So usually the only time you would use a single quotation mark is nested inside another set of quotation marks. You can also look for punctuation around single quotation marks. So commas and periods, you want to move inside the quotation mark. Question marks usually are outside, and exclamation point depends on the situation. If you're American. If you're British, all of the punctuation goes outside of the single quotation mark, in which case you would move this like that. But since I'm American, I keep it in. All right, and the other thing you can do with find and replace is just make sure you're standardizing your ellipses. So changing it into a single formatted unit instead of three separate periods like this. And that just tends to be cleaner for an ebook version. So like if you have an unstandard or unformatted ellipsis like this, then sometimes the first period would be on the first line and then the other two would be on the second line, and it just doesn't look as clean. So just making sure you switch all of those into a formatted single ellipsis can be helpful. Traditionally, we don't want to see commas going into or coming out of an ellipsis. Usually that ellipsis, you want to see it standing on your own or on its own, in which case this is usually something else that I search for. Also, as I go, I keep a running list of terms that I want to make sure they're capitalized consistently. So, if, for example, if you have Your Majesty, authors usually can't decide how they want to capitalize that, and so I will just keep a list of those sorts of terms and make sure that I'm checking them as I go. All right, so with this proofreading checklist, I go through most of these before I start working on the manuscript at all, because some of these fixes can inadvertently cause other problems. And so making sure that I take care of them before I go through the manuscript means that if I create problems accidentally, I can catch them as I go afterwards. And then once I solve an issue, I move it down into the stuff I've already done section, or if there's something I'm not sure how a client will want me to treat it, then I would move it to the stuff to ask a client section. But we're going to go ahead and talk through how we can use find and replace for each of these. All right, now that we've gone over our proofreading checklist, let's go ahead and apply it to our manuscript. So the first thing I do when I look at a manuscript is I just take a look at it. So just going to scroll through, take a look at the first page. Right off the bat, there's no table of contents, so that I know I can ignore the table of contents part of my proofreading checklist. And I just take a look at this page. So immediately I notice that this is an unstandard tab. It's not a standard indent, so I want to make sure and fix that first because that's really going to bug me. And it looks like it's just a series of spaces, so we definitely want to change that to a standard tab. And then I also see this. It looks like that's an end dash. For the sake of simplicity, we're just going to say my client wants standard em dashes for this. And then, yep, look at this. We've got a straight quotation mark. And let's see if there's anything else I can see just looking at the page. All right, nothing's popping out. By the way, there are some Easter eggs in this manuscript, so if you see them, feel free to comment below the ones that you spot. All right, so let's go ahead and take care of those indents first because that's really going to bug me. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the indents and then Control H to bring up the find and replace box. And then I'm just going to paste the 5 spaces that are masquerading as a tab. And then I'm not going to replace it with anything. I'm going to leave this totally blank and hit replace all. Now that might feel very scary because now you're going to say, well, how do I know where to put indents in? And I would say to that, you don't. What you do is you highlight the whole manuscript and then you go up to, let's see, layout and this paragraph pop out. And we're going to add a first line indentation. It'll automatically be 0.5 inches. That's fine for a manuscript. And we'll go ahead and hit OK. And now you have automatic indents that are standardized and they automatically show up. So now you don't have to worry about it. Beautiful. Now we've done that and we can cross it off of our list. The next thing that I'm going to do, because it's probably something that is why most of you are here, is to curlify the apostrophes and the quotation marks. Now this is not something you can do on Google Docs because it the quotation marks, or if you can, I don't know how to do it. The quotation marks don't curl the right way when you use this method I'm going to show you if you're using Google Docs. If you know how to do this on Google Docs, please comment below. But let me show you how I do it on Word. So first off, I find a curly quotation mark like this one and I copy it. Or if there's not one easily visible, then I just go ahead and type one so that I can copy it. All right, and then I hit Control H and got to make sure I delete those spaces that I added last time. And now I'm going to type in a quotation mark up there, and you can't really see it, but if you look very closely, it's straight up and down. And then below that, I'm going to paste my curly quotation mark. And if you look really closely, you can see that this one is straight up and down, and this one is slightly tilted. And what this will do is Word will look at every quotation mark and make it curly. So if it's straight up and down like this one, it'll curl it towards the word that it's right next to. Here, it'll curl it to the word that it's right next to automatically. So let's go ahead and hit replace all. And now look at that. We have curly quotation marks all facing the right way. We're going to do the same thing with an apostrophe or a single quotation mark, and I'm just going to type one out and copy it so it's easier for me to find. Okay, Control H, delete delete that. Okay, now we're typing in a single apostrophe here and going to the next one, and we're pasting the formatted apostrophe that we copied. So this one's straight up and down, this one's tilted. You replace all, and it made 20 replacements. So now all of the apostrophes should be correct. The one thing that this does not do correctly is a situation like this. So if you have the word until and you turn it into the word till, Word will automatically treat this as a single quotation mark instead of an apostrophe, and it'll tilt it the wrong way. So really this should look like that. It should be an apostrophe, not a single quotation mark. So when you do what I just showed you, the find and replace, every instance of this, it'll switch to that. So you just need to keep an eye out for that as you're going through the manuscript and make sure that you turn those the right way. And I do that by typing a letter, adding the apostrophe, and then getting rid of the letters I typed to kind of trick Word into formatting it like an apostrophe. So that is how you would deal with that situation. Alrighty, so now we've curlified the apostrophes and the quotation marks. They're all standard and beautiful. Now we're going to check the chapter numbering, which we can do with Control F, which is the find function. I'm going to type in chapter, and that pulls up all the places that say chapter. So we see 1, 2, 3, at least they're in the right numerical order, but 3 is spelled out and 1 and 2 are not. So I would want to ask the client what they would want to do about that. I also noticed that chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3, the heading is formatted differently. So I would just want to add that to my ask the client list as well. All right, next we're going to take care of those double spaces. Control H, space, space, and replace it with a single space. So unlike with the tabs where we didn't replace it with anything, we left the replace blank. Here we want to replace those double spaces with a single space. And you want to just keep going until there is 0 replacements, because sometimes those double spaces can be quadruple spaces and it takes a few go-throughs for them to get corrected. Okay. Beautiful. We're chugging along through our checklist. Next, we're going to look at M dashes. So what I do is I have this kind of typed out in my proofreading checklist so that it's easy for me to copy and paste into the find and replace function. If you don't know how to make any of these, you can find them in the symbols. So you go to Insert, Symbols, More Symbols, and then if you go to Special Characters, usually they're right up there by the top. M dash, N dash, and then a hyphen is just a hyphen. So I would just keep these typed out somewhere for you to easily copy them. So I'm going to copy this N dash, move over to my other manuscript, make sure I get rid of those spaces from the last find and replace I did, and now I'm pasting that N dash here. Now I got to put in the M dash. So copy paste. Alrighty. So there's the N dash, there's the N dash. I got rid of all the spacing around it, and I'm just going to hit replace all. Just remember that if you have like a date line, then you might want to use an N dash if it's a date range. So just know your manuscript, and in that case, you would go find next instead of replace all. You would find next and manually replace each one so that you don't mess up your date ranges with N dashes. Okay, and we'll do that with a hyphen. Replace all. Good. Okay, now in theory they should all be M dashes, which is what we want, but now we want to get rid of the spacing around it. So I'll add a space after this M dash, and there's no space here. I'll go ahead and replace all. And now I'll get rid of that space and add a space before it. Replace all. There you go. Now you should have tight set M dashes for all of your dashes, which is the way this client wants it. Alrighty. Next, we're going to look for incorrect punctuation around single quotation marks. So I'm going to do Control F to find them, and I'll do a single quotation mark and a period. All right, in this sentence, he double-checked the machinery, safety on, fully charged, phaser set to stun. This is not inside a quote, so this should actually be a double quotation mark anyways. So we'll change that to a double quotation mark and move the punctuation inside the quotation mark. Let's see if we've got any others. All right, no other matches. Let's see if there's any ones with commas. Aha. Okay, so this is a quote with a single quote nested inside. That's correct. And it looks like this quotation mark got turned the wrong way. So that should, now we've turned that the right way. This punctuation should go inside the single quote, but let's check the context. The writ of execution fluttered in the man's worthless fingers. Since that is not a dialogue tag, it's an action tag. Notice I've changed it from a comma to a period here. So I'll just show you what I did. So we changed it from this to that. All right, let's see if there's any others. No other matches. We should be good to go, but I'll just double check with a question mark and a single quote. Exclamation quote, mark, single quote. Nope, we're good to go. All right, and so the second to last thing that we have to do is standardizing our ellipses. So let's go ahead and create a formatted ellipsis like this and copy that into the replace with. And then up here, you just put 3 periods. So this doesn't auto-format for you, which is why you want to find a formatted version and copy it in here. And then you just go ahead and replace all. Okay, now that we have standardized all of our ellipses, I just want to make sure that there's none with commas. So let's check that out. Find next. Nope. Okay, what about after? Find next. Aha, here's one. We'll go ahead and get rid of that comma. All right. The last thing that I want to show you how to do with find and replace is standardizing capitalization. So, for example, Your Majesty, something that authors have a hard time deciding how they want to capitalize. Let's say you've decided that you want to capitalize all instances of Your Majesty. Oops, sorry, Control H. Okay. So you would find Your Majesty, lowercase, and you would capitalize it. But in order to do that, you want to match the case. So you click this More button, Match Case, and then you replace all. And let's say you want to do this too. Let's say there's a capital Y, but lowercase m. You just want to make sure you catch that variation as well. And for kicks and giggles, let's say someone did this. Okay, so now all the Your Majesties would be capitalized. Now, let's say you have something like the king, and you want to lowercase it into the king. You would keep the match case on, but you would want to type out the whole phrase like this, because if you just typed out king, like this, then the title, all instances of king, would become lowercase. Or vice versa. Let's say you had lowercase kings and you wanted them all to be uppercase kings. Well, what about a word like kingdom or kingly, in which case you're kind of in a bind, because now you've capitalized all the instances of the word kingly in addition to the word king. So in something like this, you could say find whole words only, or if there's like a phrase like the king, you could do that. And once you've made all the changes you want to make, just make sure you deselect match case. Otherwise, that will stay on for your next find. So if you left the match case on the next time you did just any old find search, it would still be matching the case. All right. And I think that takes care of our proofreading checklist using find and replace. If you have any other tips or tricks on how you use find and replace in your proofreading and copy editing, please leave a comment below. And thank you so much for watching.